Okay guys, so how to start your Final Cut project. First of all, you need to create a new library. It's like a folder that contains everything you need to create your project. So all of the footage, all of the projects with timelines, all of your images, captions, everything you use to create this particular video is contained in the Final Cut library. In order to start, you just need to click on the open library. As you can see, I already have some projects here, but normally it would be completely empty. So you press on the new button. So now you need to choose the location where you want to save the project. Depending on your situation, you can either select your built-in storage or some external drive. If it's a big project and you have loads of footage, you might want to create your library on the external drive. However, Final Cut project seems to work faster if you create your library on the SSD external drive. The best if it's on the built-in SSD drive. What I like to do very often, if it's a big project, for example, you can create the library on your built-in hard drive in your computer, and then you can keep your footage on your external hard drive and import the footage into the library without actually copying it into the library. So it only creates an alias of the files in the project, but the files stay on your hard drive. So in this case, I will start a new library on the SSD drive I have connected to my computer, and let's name it new video. And we can import some videos. So you press on import media. So I select the folder, and here on the right side of the screen you have some options. You don't need to worry about the event, you can leave it the way it is. You can also create a new event and you can name it. Let's say you are shooting a documentary and maybe every single day you are importing new footage into the library. So you can name your imports as like day 1, day 2, day 3 and stuff like that. But usually for basic projects you don't need to worry about stuff like that. So you leave it to the default. Then here you make a choice if you want to copy your entire footage into the library or you want to keep it in place. If it's a small project and maybe you want to edit this project on different computers, because maybe you have some computer at work and then you take the project on the external drive, you take it home and you finish it on your laptop, you want all the files that are needed to complete the project to be with you in that library, then sometimes it's worth it to copy everything, to consolidate your library. If you have your footage on external drive, your library is on your built-in computer hard drive and you don't have that much storage, most of the time you don't want to copy everything to the library because you don't want it to take too much space on your computer and you don't want to double your footage and keep your footage in two places at the same time. You just choose leave the files in place. Then you have some automatic options here. Most of the times you don't have to use that option, so you can leave that too. And then you have some transcoding. If you would choose create optimized media, it will consume a lot of size on your drive, so I would keep that off. It's better if Final Cut is creating optimized media when it needs to in the process of editing. Very important option is create proxy media. If you're gonna choose that, the Final Cut gonna create a copy of entire footage in lower quality that's easier and faster for your computer to process. So then when you edit your videos, you can switch between the original media and the proxy media. So if you want to edit faster and you want to have very smooth playback without any stuttering, you change the quality to the proxy and then you can have a smooth playback. And when you are done with editing and you want to save your final video, you switch your preview back to the original media. It's also useful if you have a lot of footage and you have it on your drive at home. You want to have the copy of the entire footage in this low quality, because if you're gonna create proxy media, the copy of your entire footage in this low quality gonna be stored in the library on your computer, for example. You can go out without the external drive with all the files. You can only use the proxy media to edit the entire project somewhere on the go, in the coffee place or somewhere, and then you can go back home. You can switch from the proxy media to the original media and render the final video at the very end. It's useful settings to use, however keep in mind it will take some time to process because Final Cut has to take all of your footage and transcode the footage to that lower quality. Depending on the size of the footage and the speed of your computer, it can take from few minutes to few hours. Today we're gonna just skip that part. Then you have another batch of automatic options, but I never use it. If I need to do anything like that, I do it later, so I wouldn't select any of those options, and all that can stay the same. So now you can import your selected files. In this case I selected the entire folder, so let's import the files. That's some unsupported XML files. So when you have footage from Sony camera, you have your video files, and next to the video files you have some XML files that are some sort of informational files created by the camera. You don't need to worry about that, you just press continue import, and there you have it, guys. Here in this window we have all of the footage I imported into the project. If you want to import more videos into the project, you can just drag them from your macOS straight to the Final Cut, but when you're gonna do that, keep in mind that in that case Final Cut gonna copy the files into the library and it's gonna grow the size of the library. But if you want to import more files without copying them to the library, just keeping the files in place, you just need to go again into the file, import, media, and then you can repeat the process. And now when you have your files already here in the Final Cut, you can start a new project. A project is basically like a chopping board, like a timeline where you create your video. So you need to start a new project to start editing, and you need to choose some options. So you press here new project and you can name your project. So we're gonna name it new video. You can allocate this project into a specific event, but because we don't do that, we just keep everything by the default. And here, a very important option, we need to choose the resolution of the project. So depending on what will be the final resolution of the video, is it 4K, is it 2K, is it 1080p HD, then you have some higher resolutions like 5K, 8K, but you're probably not gonna be using that. You have some 360 video, and you have vertical and square. That's two options that you're gonna use for your Reels, TikToks, and some Facebook ads and stuff like that. For now, we're gonna be focusing on a basic, like a YouTube video kind of situation, so we're gonna choose 4K. And then the frame rate, most of the time you will be exporting your videos in either 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second. It's good to match your source. If you shot everything on the iPhone in 30 frames per second or 60 frames per second, you can use 30 frames per second, and then if you have 60 frames per second files, you can slow them down 2 times and create like a 2 times slow motion or something. If you shot in 24 frames per second, you should go for the 24 frames per second. The footage I imported into the library comes from my Sony camera. I've shot it in 120 frames per second, but I would like to create some 5 times slow motion, so I will go for the 24 frames per second. We have 2 options for it. Usually if you shoot with Sony camera, it doesn't have like the actual 24 frames per second. It shoots in that strange 23.98 frames per second, so we're gonna go for this one. Rendering, this is the codec that's gonna be used for your playback, but you don't need to worry about that. Basically, the higher codec you're gonna choose, the easier it is for the computer to process, but it will increase the size of your library. So if you don't have enough storage space on the drive you used for creating your project or on your computer, you shouldn't go for those higher codecs. However, this one at the bottom is also a high codec. It's uncompressed, actually 10-bit 422, so this is like, it's the biggest file size. I don't understand why it's at the bottom, but the lowest size codecs is ProRes 422 and the ProRes 422 Lite. Lite gonna have smaller size of files in the library, but ProRes 422, it's easier for the computer to process, so I usually go with this option. You can leave the audio options as the default, so just press OK to start a new project. And now here you have 2 tabs. This tab is for all the footage and this tab is for all the projects. Because, for example, you have a project and you want to edit your YouTube video and then you want to create like a shorter vertical version of it for the reel, you can start another project in the same library, the vertical one, and you're gonna have it here in this tab. So just to show you, you go to the file, new project, you go to vertical video, let's call it new video TikTok version. For TikTok you go vertical, 1080p, vertically. You can leave the same frame rate like the original video. The best frame rate for YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels and TikToks is 30 frames per second. And now we have two projects, the horizontal project and the vertical project. I can select all of my footage, for example, and I can place it here on the timeline. And now, as you can see, you have all of your videos on the timeline, and you can start editing, you can start cutting them, rearranging them, and then you can save your final video. But yeah, I will show you all that good stuff in the future tutorials. So that's gonna be it for today. Now you know how to start your project in the Final Cut Pro. Thank you guys for watching. If you found the information useful, make sure to leave the thumbs up and subscribe to my channel because there is more tutorials on the way. And see you in the next one.